They never screamed at you. They never called you names. They never left a mark anyone could see. But something happened to you. Something slow. Something that took years to understand and even longer to name. You started doubting your memory. You started apologizing for things you didn't do. You started shrinking, getting quieter, smaller, more careful, like you were always one wrong word away from something you couldn't quite define. That wasn't an accident. What you experienced had a name. A method. A psychology behind it so calculated, so deliberate, that most people never see it coming, and many never fully understand what was done to them even after it's over. Today we are going to change that. This is Silent Weapons. And by the end of this video, you will never look at silence the same way again. When most people think of a narcissist, they picture someone loud, arrogant. The person who talks about themselves all night and leaves no oxygen in the room. That type exists. But they are not the dangerous one. The dangerous one is quiet. They listen. They remember details. They seem thoughtful, even humble. People like them. Trust them. Confide in them. And behind that careful, constructed exterior, they are keeping score of everything. This is the covert narcissist. Sometimes called the vulnerable narcissist, the closet narcissist, the introverted narcissist. The names change depending on the research you read. The behavior does not. What separates them from the loud version is not the hunger, it is the method. A covert narcissist wants the same things every narcissist wants: control, admiration, dominance, and a world that bends around their needs. They simply refuse to be obvious about it. Because being obvious is a vulnerability. And covert narcissists do not do vulnerable. They present as victims. As misunderstood people who have been treated unfairly their entire lives. As gentle, sensitive souls who only ever wanted love and somehow always end up betrayed. And the person listening to that story, the person who feels compassion, who leans in, who thinks finally, someone who gets it, that person has just become the next chapter in a very old pattern. Now we get to the weapon itself. Silence. Not the comfortable silence between people who trust each other. Not the quiet of a peaceful evening. This silence is a tool, engineered, deployed, and withdrawn with precision. It has a clinical name, the silent treatment. But that name makes it sound childish. A tantrum. A sulk. It is not. In the hands of a covert narcissist, silence is a full psychological operation. It communicates threat without a single word. It creates anxiety without leaving evidence. It punishes without accountability. And it works, because human beings are wired to interpret silence as danger. Think about it. When someone you love goes quiet, suddenly, completely, without explanation, your nervous system does not sit back and wait patiently. It goes to work. It asks questions. It replays conversations looking for the mistake. It generates scenarios, each one more troubling than the last. You become the investigator of your own destruction. And they never had to say a single word. This is the first silent weapon, strategic withdrawal. They go cold. Not gone, that would be too clean. They are still present. Still in the house. Still sitting across from you at dinner. But they are unreachable. Like a door with no handle. You knock. You get nothing. So you knock harder. You apologize. You ask what you did. You try humor, then warmth, then logic. You try silence yourself, hoping they will fill it. They wait. They wait because every second you spend trying to reach them is a second they are confirming something to themselves, that you need them more than they need you. That they have the power here. That you will do whatever it takes to restore the connection. And when they finally do come back, when the warmth returns and the coldness lifts, the relief you feel is so overwhelming that you barely notice you just accepted blame for something you didn't do. That is not an accident either. The second weapon does not operate in silence. It operates in language, but language twisted so carefully that it leaves you more confused than silence ever could. Gaslighting. The word comes from a 1944 film in which a husband systematically manipulates his wife into believing she is losing her mind, dimming the gaslights in their home and denying it when she notices. She sees it. He tells her she is imagining things. She believes him, because why would someone who loves her lie? That is the architecture of gaslighting, plausible denial delivered by someone whose word you trust more than your own perception. A covert narcissist does not gaslight clumsily. They do not shout that never happened and storm off. They are far more sophisticated than that. They say, "I think you might be misremembering." They say, "You have been really stressed lately. Are you sure you are okay?" They say, "I am worried about you. You seem to be struggling with reality a bit." Every statement lands as concern. Every statement is a blade. Over time, and this is what makes it so devastating, you stop trusting yourself. Not all at once. Slowly. The way erosion works. One conversation at a time, one rewritten memory at a time, until the version of reality they have constructed feels more solid than your own. You start running things by them before you trust your own judgment. You start apologizing preemptively, before they have said anything, because you have learned that your perception is somehow always slightly wrong. That is not a character flaw. That is the result of a sustained psychological operation carried out by someone who understood exactly what they were doing. You did not lose your mind. It was taken from you, carefully, methodically, and over a very long time. The third weapon is guilt, but not the kind that comes from something you actually did. This is manufactured guilt. Engineered guilt. Guilt created from nothing and handed to you like a debt you somehow owe. Covert narcissists are masters at this because they have perfected the art of the indirect accusation. They don't say "you hurt me." They sigh heavily and go quiet when you mention your plans. They don't say "I am angry." They say "no, it is fine" in a tone that makes very clear it is not fine. They don't accuse you of anything specific, they simply make you feel like a bad person until you are working overtime to prove that you are not. This is sometimes called the guilt trip. But again, that phrase makes it sound small. Manageable. Like something you can simply refuse to take. You cannot simply refuse. Not when it has been running for years. Not when you have been conditioned to believe that their discomfort is your responsibility. Not when every time you tried to set a boundary, something quietly terrible happened until you undid it. The function of manufactured guilt is to keep you in a state of permanent emotional debt. You are always slightly behind. Always slightly failing them. Always one better effort away from being the person they need you to be, except that person does not exist, because the debt is not real, and it will never be paid off. That is the design. A person carrying guilt is a person who does not leave. A person who does not leave is a person who can be controlled. A person who can be controlled is exactly what a covert narcissist needs. Here is what none of the articles tell you. None of the listicles. None of the 10 signs you are with a narcissist content that floods the internet. They don't just hurt you. They erase you. Not dramatically. Not with a speech or a confrontation. They do it through 1,000 tiny reductions. Each one almost invisible. Each one deniable. But compounding, always compounding, until one day you look in the mirror and the person looking back has forgotten who they were before. Your opinion started getting corrected, not harshly, just gently redirected until you stopped offering them. Your friendships became inconvenient, not forbidden, just subtly complicated until maintaining them felt like more effort than they were worth. Your interests, your humor, your ways of seeing the world, slowly, quietly, lovingly crowded out until you were shaped almost entirely around their needs, their moods, their version of who you were supposed to be. This is the most insidious part of covert narcissistic abuse. When it is over, you do not just grieve the relationship. You grieve yourself. You grieve the version of you that existed before. The confidence you had. The way you used to trust your own instincts. The friendships that quietly dissolved. The dreams you stopped mentioning because mentioning them always seemed to make the air in the room change. You grieve a person, and that person is you. That grief is real. That loss is real. And the fact that no one saw it happening does not make it any less significant. Before we talk about what comes next, we have to address the question that survivors of covert narcissistic abuse ask themselves more than any other. Why did I stay? And underneath that question, the one that really hurts, why didn't I see it? Here is the answer: because it was designed not to be seen. Covert narcissists do not build prisons with visible walls. They build them out of warmth and intermittent kindness, and just enough genuine connection that leaving feels like an overreaction. Like betrayal. Like you are the cruel one for walking away from someone who tried so hard. The periods of warmth were not accidental. They were necessary to keep you bonded, to keep the relationship feeling like it had potential, to keep you believing that the cold version was the exception and the warm version was the real one. It was not. They were both real. And both were in service of the same goal. You stayed because you are a human being capable of love and loyalty and hope. You stayed because those are not weaknesses, they are the things that make you worth knowing. They are also, unfortunately, the things that made you a target. Stop asking why you didn't leave sooner. Start asking what you are going to do now that you know. Recovery from covert narcissistic abuse is not a return. You cannot go back to who you were before. That person existed before they knew what you now know. Before they understood what silence can do. Before they learned that cruelty does not always announce itself. Recovery is a construction. You are building something new. And the foundation of that construction is this: your perception is valid. What you felt was real. What you experienced was real. The confusion, the self-doubt, the exhaustion of living inside a reality that kept shifting beneath your feet, all of it was real, and none of it was your fault. The work now is learning to trust yourself again. One small decision at a time. One moment of trusting your own read of a situation before second-guessing it. One boundary held even when the old anxiety shows up and tells you to undo it. It is slow work. It is not linear. There will be days when the self-doubt comes back so loud it feels like nothing has changed. On those days, remember this. You survived something that was designed to break you. Something that operated without leaving marks. Something that most people around you never even saw. You are still here. You are asking the questions. You are doing the work of understanding, and that understanding is the beginning of something they never wanted.